This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. Good morning, I'm John Trout. It's Tuesday, July 2nd, 2024. Here's what's coming up on America in the Morning.
The Supreme Court rules on presidential immunity, and President Biden isn't happy.
With fear for our democracy, I dissent.
I'm Linda Kenyon in Washington.
The Biden campaign attempts to reset following last week's debate. I'm John Stolnis in Washington.
The murder trial against Karen Reed in Massachusetts has ended with a hung jury.
She did not cause his death.
I'm Jackie Quinn.
A U.S. Congresswoman facing charges after a gun is found in her carry-on bag at the airport. I'm Clayton Neville.
On Wall Street, a winning start to July trading as investors wait for the big jobs report coming Friday morning after the holiday. I'm Jessica Ettinger.
House Republicans are trying again to get the audio recording of President Biden's interview with the special counsel in Sagar Magani, Washington.
All ahead on America in the Morning. The Supreme Court has issued a landmark ruling on presidential immunity. Correspondent Linda Kenyon has the story from Washington.
In a 6-3 decision along ideological lines, the nation's highest court ruled presidents have absolute immunity from criminal prosecution for official actions taken while in office, but not for unofficial ones. The decision is a win for former President Trump, who sought immunity from prosecution in connection with the January 6th riot at the Capitol and his efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. The ruling tracked with D. John Sauer's arguments as he presented the case back in April on behalf of Donald Trump.
Prosecuting the president for his official acts is an innovation with no foothold in history or tradition and incompatible with our constitutional structure.
Justice Sonia Sotomayor was skeptical.
A president is entitled for total personal gain to use the trappings of his office without facing criminal liability.
But if liability were the issue, said Justice Brett Kavanaugh, it would have a chilling effect on every president forevermore.
When former presidents are subject to prosecution, and the history of Morrison versus Olson tells us it's not going to stop.
President Biden, responding to the ruling, strongly disagreed with that argument.
This nation was founded on the principle that there are no kings in America. Each of us is equal before the law. No one is above the law.
And Biden said the decision declares there are no limits on what a president can do.
This is a fundamentally new principle, and it's a dangerous precedent.
With Donald Trump vowing to become a dictator on day one and to exact revenge and retribution against his political opponents, Joe Biden is sounding an alarm.
The presidency is the most powerful office in the world. It's an office that not only tests your judgment, perhaps even more importantly, it's an office that can test your character. Because you not only face moments when you need the courage to exercise the full power of the presidency, you also face moments where you need the wisdom to respect the limits.
And he cited word for word the dissent by Justice Sotomayor, one of the 3 liberal justices on the court.
She said, in every use of official power, the president is now a king above the law. With fear for our democracy, I dissent.
Now the issue of what is considered an official versus an unofficial act goes to the lower courts, and most immediately places the prosecution of Trump in the January 6th case in jeopardy. It also means that case and all other federal cases still pending against the former president are highly unlikely to advance before Election Day. Linda Kenyon, Washington.
On the heels of the presidential debate, the Biden campaign is trying to reset after a performance that has more Democrats pessimistic about his ability to do the job for 4 more years and beat Donald Trump in November. John Stolnis has that story from Washington.
Spending a final morning at Camp David, President Biden and his campaign continued to try and put Thursday's debate performance behind them by continuing on with the status quo, warning Donald Trump is a threat to democracy and showcasing Biden's accomplishments. Campaign officials are also reportedly meeting with top donors, trying to reassure them to continue funneling money into Biden's re-election campaign. Speaking on CNN, Mitch Landrieu, Biden-Harris campaign co-chair, says people aren't paying enough attention to Donald Trump's performance last last Thursday.
When Donald Trump was talking, if his lips were moving, he was lying. And when he wasn't lying, he was actually doubling down on election denial. Right. He was talking about the insurrection not being a bad thing, and he was talking about using his power to hurt people.
Potential Trump vice presidential pick Senator Tim Scott on Fox News says the debate proved Trump is the only logical choice.
It's a good day and probably the best week so far for President Trump, but it gets better. President Trump's record is so strong, so powerful, so convincing that the Democrats, their tribal union is breaking down.
The president's family is reportedly urging him to stay in the race. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who some say would be an ideal person to replace him should Biden step aside, released a statement insisting Biden can still win her state and that she is 100% behind the president. In Pennsylvania, Senator Bob Casey continues to have Biden's back.
He had a bad night in a debate, but I think people know what's at stake.
President Biden will discuss extreme weather at an emergency operations center later today and has a light schedule the rest of this 4th of July week. John Stolnis, Washington.
Among the stories we're covering next, Congresswoman charged with weapons violations. When America in the Morning continues after these messages. Back now on America in the Morning. Drenching thunderstorms in store for many in the South. Here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy with the forecast.
In the southeast, there is a lingering frontal boundary holding stationary through southern Georgia into northern Florida, and then westward along the Gulf Coast. This will activate some showers and thunderstorms today, some of which will produce drenching rainfall. Farther north and west, we have a storm now in Canada that has a cold front associated with it, extending well to the south through the Midwest and continuing into the Central Plains. This storm will produce widespread showers and thunderstorms as far west as Montana, into the Dakotas with heavier thunderstorms along the front through Wisconsin, southward to eastern Nebraska and Iowa, and into central Kansas and even parts of western Oklahoma and north Texas. The heaviest of the activity is going to be across the northern states where flash flooding, damaging winds, hail, and even a tornado can occur. The storms in Kansas and Texas will mainly have some hail and gusty winds. Farther south, there can be some scattered afternoon thunderstorms through parts of Arizona and New Mexico, mainly in the higher elevations. But dry weather will encompass a large area in between those two thunderstorm systems from the rest of Texas northeastward through the southeast, middle Atlantic, eastern Great Lakes, and even the northeast, where high pressure will provide a significant influence. It will remain hot in the southern plains with highs in the 90s and 100s, and then drop into the 70s and 80s as you approach the Great Lakes and northeast. Meanwhile, the west will remain dry and it will become hot again in the afternoon through parts of California into the southwest. This will be a part of a major heat wave developing through the rest of the holiday week into the weekend. Highs in the valley areas will easily reach into the 100s, with many places surpassing 110. It'll be much more comfortable across the northwest. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
Remember to follow us wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. Massachusetts judge declares mistrial in Karen Reed's murder trial after a jury deadlocked with no decision despite more than 26 hours of deliberation. Correspondent Jackie Quinn reports.
Prosecutors say they will try again. A Boston area jury deadlocked after hours of deliberations, telling Norfolk County Superior Court Judge Beryl Canoni,
"We continue to find ourselves at an impasse. Our perspectives on the evidence are starkly divided."
The judge declared a mistrial after months of testimony, including Karen Reed's lawyer telling the jury she didn't strike her police officer boyfriend with an SUV in January 2022.
She did not cause his death.
He said Reed was framed and that another officer may have beaten up John O'Keefe during a drinking party that night. Prosecutors had recordings of bitter phone messages between the couple, a broken taillight, and a strand of hair as evidence, but the defense contended they could have been planted. The state says Reed will be put on trial again. I'm Jackie Quinn.
An Indiana Congresswoman is charged with a weapons violation at Washington Dulles International Airport. Correspondent Clayton Neville has details.
Congresswoman Victoria Spartz facing a misdemeanor charge after the Metropolitan Airports Authority says she violated a section of Virginia law that prohibits carrying any gun, explosive, or taser into an airport. She has a court hearing set for a later date. Congresswoman Spartz, the first Ukrainian-born member of Congress, she recently won re-election in her Indiana district and has become known as a leading Republican voice for the U.S. response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Now, in response to the incident at Dulles Airport, a spokesperson for Spartz said the Congresswoman accidentally carried an empty handgun in her suitcase with no magazines or bullets, which she didn't realize was in the pocket of that suitcase. The Congresswoman was cited and was still able to board the flight. I'm Clayton Neville.
When we return on America in the Morning, the year's first half in stocks and what investors can expect in the second half. After these messages. We're back. This is America in the Morning. The business report is sponsored by Fisher Investments. Fisher Investments is a fiduciary, always putting clients' interests first. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Here's CNBC's Jessica Ettinger.
Wall Street opens this morning after a winning start to July trading, also the start of the third quarter and the second half of the year. The NASDAQ opens this morning at a new all-time high. Now, that first half of the year was really strong for stocks. The NASDAQ up 18%. The S&P 500 index up about 14%.
First half versus second half and what it does typically imply when we've seen the kind of gains we have?
Something like better than 75% after you've been up big in the first half, let's call it 10 or 15%, you are up in the subsequent 6 months. So that's a little bit better than the historical average of just all years. And the actual returns, median returns, are like the high single digits or close to 10%. This is all depending on how you slice it and what time period you cover.
CNBC's Mike Santoli with CNBC's David Faber. The Boston Celtics majority owner has put the team up for sale just weeks after winning the NBA championship. The team was bought for $360 million in 2002. That was a lot of money back then. And as sports franchise valuations have soared, the Celtics could fetch a particularly high price. Cruise line stocks struggled yesterday as Hurricane Beryl brews in the Caribbean. It's a reminder of how severe weather can impact that industry. Carnival and Norwegian each were down 5%. Royal Caribbean shares were down almost 2% yesterday. Amazon giving $200 instant Amazon gift cards to Prime members who sign up for the new Prime Visa credit card. This is ahead of the Prime Day sale later this month, July 16th and 17th.
Still to come this summer, big brand names catching Olympic fever.
Well, you know, some are because they're paying to be associated, like Omega Watches and Samsung. Airbnb is in this year, Coca-Cola, Procter & Gamble, Toyota, and Visa. Then there are companies like Chipotle. While not a major Olympic Committee sponsor, it's getting in on the act and celebrating USA athletes heading to the Olympics.
Chipotle is going for the gold. The chain says it will wrap its burritos in gold foil for a limited time. To celebrate the Summer Olympic Games, you'll start to see the golden burritos. On July 25th, the opening ceremony of the Olympics is the following day.
CNBC's Tyler Matheson. More companies are expected to announce Olympic tie-ins and promotions over the coming weeks. On today's watch list, we get a look at the job market with the JOLTS report on job opportunity and labor turnover. This comes ahead of Friday morning's big government employment report for June. Today, we also get some light vehicle sales numbers, and Six Flags Entertainment begins trading on the New York Stock Exchange under the ticker symbol FUN. It has merged with Cedar Fair.
CNBC's Jessica Ettinger. GOP seeks Biden recordings when America in the Morning continues after these messages. Welcome back. You're with America in the Morning. House Republicans make another bid to get the audio recording of President Biden's interview with special counsel in his classified documents case. Washington correspondent Sagar Meghani reports.
Republicans had subpoenaed Attorney General Merrick Garland and held him in contempt of Congress for not releasing the audio.
I will not be intimidated.
Now they've sued him, asking a court to enforce the subpoena and reject White House claims of executive privilege. It's uncertain how the suit will play out. Courts have not said much about executive privilege, making clear they want the White House and Congress to resolve things on their own when possible. But the Supreme Court did step in during the Watergate era, unanimously ruling President Nixon had to turn over Oval Office recordings. Sagar Meghani, Washington.
She tried to use an inflatable boat to cross a lake from the U.S. to Canada. And what happened next was something she didn't plan on. Correspondent Julie Walker reports.
A woman from China arrested at a Vermont lake bordering Quebec for trying to smuggle 29 eastern box turtles, a protected species, in violation of the Endangered Species Act, into Canada by kayak, according to Border Patrol agents. Wang Yang was arrested Friday at a Canaan Airbnb as she was about to get into that inflatable kayak with a duffel bag full of turtles wrapped in socks, according to an agent's affidavit, which also states a man believed to be her husband and another person had started to paddle their own inflatable from the Canadian side of the lake toward the U.S. The affidavit also says Lake Wallace is a known spot for human and narcotic smuggling. I'm Julie Walker.
America in the Morning for Tuesday, July 2nd, 2024 is produced by Jeff McKay. Our senior producer, Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One. This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. I'm John Trout. Coming up this half hour.
President Biden is blasting the Supreme Court's ruling that grants broad immunity. Sagar Meghani, Washington.
Beryl moving west toward the Gulf of Mexico with destruction in its wake. I'm Clayton Neville.
Longtime Donald Trump ally Steve Bannon reports to prison in Connecticut. Jennifer King, Washington.
5 people were shot near the University of Cincinnati campus. 3 of them died. I'm Rita Foley.
5 members of a Georgia family died when their small plane crashed in upstate New York. I'm Mike Hempen.
The Supreme Court decides not to decide on social media issues. I'm Chuck Palm.
And one of the most iconic teams in sports is up for sale. Back after these messages. This is America in the Morning on a Tuesday filled with thunderstorms for many in the central part of the U.S. With the outlook, here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
A storm that moved out of the Rockies yesterday and into the plains has shifted into Canada today, but the cold front associated with that system will extend well to the south through the Midwest and continuing into the central plains. This storm will produce widespread showers and thunderstorms as far west as Montana into the Dakotas, with heavier thunderstorms through Wisconsin, southward into eastern Nebraska and Iowa, into central Kansas, and even parts of western Oklahoma into northern Texas. The heaviest of the activity will be across the northern states, where flash flooding, damaging winds, hail, and even a tornado can occur, while storms in Kansas into Texas will have mainly some hail and gusty winds. Farther south, there could be some scattered afternoon thunderstorms through parts of Arizona and New Mexico, mainly in the higher elevations. Meanwhile, in the west, it will remain largely dry and will become hot again in the afternoon. This will be a part of a major heat wave that will develop through the region through the holiday week into the weekend. Highs in the valley areas will easily reach into the 100s, with many places surpassing 110. It will be more comfortable in the northwest, with highs in the 70s and 80s. Heading into the southeast, there is a lingering frontal boundary holding stationary through southern Georgia into northern Florida, and then westward along the Gulf Coast. This will activate some showers and thunderstorms, some of which could produce drenching rainfall. And then dry weather will encompass a large area from Texas northeastward into New England. That's the weather across America. Des Moines, Iowa will have some sunshine today, but a couple of heavy gusty thunderstorms in the afternoon with a high of 81. Charlotte, North Carolina will have a pleasant day with partly sunny skies and a high of 87. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
Remember, you can follow us wherever you get your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. The Supreme Court has ruled for the first time that former presidents have broad immunity from prosecution while extending the delay in the Washington criminal case against Donald Trump. Washington correspondent Sagar Magani reports on that decision and on President Biden's response to the 6-3 ruling.
The Supreme Court's 6 conservative justices handed Donald Trump a major win in his immunity case, and the 3 liberals ripped their decision. Sonia Sotomayor shook her head, gritted her teeth, and strongly pronounced each word. Reading her dissent aloud from the bench, she called the decision utterly indefensible, one that effectively creates a law-free zone around the president, whom she says is now a king above the law. In a dissent joined by Elena Kagan and Ketanji Brown Jackson, Sotomayor wrote, "Ironic, isn't it? The man in charge of enforcing the laws can now just break them." Chief Justice John Roberts says the ruling does not put presidents above the law, accusing the 3 liberals of fear-mongering.
You come across a lot of cases where the U.S. attorney or another federal prosecutor really wanted to indict a case and the grand jury refused to do so.
I think that the other
Every
level
once in a while there's an eclipse too.
Well, I think that's for the most reason is prosecutors have no incentive to bring a case to a grand jury and secure an indictment when they don't have evidence to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. It's self-defeating.
President Biden is blasting the Supreme Court's ruling that grants broad immunity from prosecution to Donald Trump and other presidents. The president says the nation was founded on a fundamental principle.
This nation was founded on the principle that there are no kings in America. Each of us is equal before the law. No one is above the law, not even the President of the United States.
He says that has now changed.
With today's Supreme Court decision on presidential immunity, that fundamentally changed. For all practical purposes, today's decision almost certainly means that there are virtually no limits on what a president can do.
Calling it a dangerous precedent, ripping the high court for making it highly unlikely that Trump will stand trial before November for his role in the Capitol insurrection.
It's a terrible disservice to the people of this nation.
And leaves them with the choice.
Whether Donald Trump's assault on our democracy on January 6th makes him unfit for public office in the highest office in the land.
Sagar Magani, Washington.
Hurricane Beryl is churning in the Atlantic through the Caribbean islands toward the Gulf of Mexico. Correspondent Clayton Neville is tracking the storm and its impacts.
I didn't think that the damage would be so much. I just come to open the shop to check on it, but now I realize it is much more than I thought.
Beryl made landfall as a strong Category 4 hurricane. It snapped banana trees and destroyed homes in places like St. Lucia and Grenada. Heavy rain dumped on the islands, and more expected with the system as it moves west.
With the center of the storm expected to pass south of Hispaniola on Tuesday and Tuesday night. However, given the large size of the system, the tropical storm force winds are expected to reach portions of the southern coast of the Dominican Republic and Haiti, where we have a tropical storm warning in effect. And then on Wednesday, the center of Beryl is expected to pass near or over Jamaica. We have a hurricane watch in effect, with the worst conditions there expected on Wednesday. And then after that time, Beryl is going to pass through the northwestern Caribbean.
National Hurricane Center Director Mike Brennan says perhaps near the Cayman Islands.
Belize, the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico Thursday and Friday, and then moving into the extreme southern Gulf of Mexico as we get into Saturday. So certainly going to be impacts across the Caribbean Sea from Beryl over the next several days.
Some good news. Brennan says the atmosphere is expected to become less favorable for Beryl to maintain its current strength.
But the system is expected to remain a major hurricane through Tuesday night or Wednesday morning and maintain hurricane strength all the way until it gets to the Yucatan Peninsula on late Thursday or Thursday night or early Friday. And Beryl is still forecast to be a rather potent tropical storm in the southern Gulf of Mexico next weekend.
Beryl's still very much an active storm, but already a historic one. It strengthened from a tropical depression to a major hurricane in just 42 hours. That's only happened 6 other times in Atlantic hurricane history. Beryl also the earliest Cat 4 Atlantic hurricane on record. Before that, July 8th was the earliest. That was Hurricane Dennis in 2005. Beryl also owns the record for the farthest a hurricane has formed in the tropical Atlantic in June. I'm Clayton Neville.
The family of a 13-year-old boy killed by police in upstate New York is demanding accountability. Correspondent Julie Walker is following the latest on this developing story.
Utica, New York police releasing body cam from Friday's fatal shooting of 13-year-old Nia Moe. Police say they thought he had a gun, which the video shows, only it turned out to be a Glock replica pellet gun. The officers are on admin leave and investigation underway. Moe's family and the ethnic Karen community from Myanmar, which they are part of, demanding justice, saying he was racially and ethnically profiled by police. Mayor Michael Galimi addressing concerns at a Utica Karen community meeting Sunday.
This community is going through a first in this country. You have not lost someone in this way in this country.
Police say the 13-year-old and another boy were stopped because they fit descriptions of suspects in an armed robbery. I'm Julie Walker.
When we return on America in the Morning, Bannon behind bars, and Supreme Court rules on social media content. After these messages. We're back. I'm John Trout. This is America in the Morning. Former President Donald Trump's ally Steve Bannon is now behind bars after he reported to prison to serve a contempt of Congress charge. Correspondent Jennifer King reports.
I am proud to go to prison. If this is what it takes to stand up to tyranny, if this is what it takes to stand up to the Garland, corrupt, criminal DOJ, if this is what it takes to stand up to Nancy Pelosi, if this is what it takes to stand up to Joe Biden, I'm proud to do it.
On Friday, the Supreme Court rejected Bannon's emergency appeal. The former White House strategist remains defiant.
I'm serving my country right now as a political prisoner in Danbury starting on Monday.
He told ABC's Jonathan Karl he has the support of Republican House leaders.
From the Speaker of the House and the House of Representatives.
A jury found Bannon guilty of 2 counts of contempt of Congress for refusing to sit for a deposition with the January 6th House Committee and refusing to provide documents related to efforts to overturn Trump's 2020 election laws. Bannon's also facing criminal charges in New York State, where it's alleged he duped donors who gave money to build a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border. He's pled not guilty in that case, and the trial has been postponed until at least the end of September.
I'm a political prisoner of Nancy Pelosi. I'm a political prisoner of Merrick Garland. I'm a political prisoner of Joe Biden, the corrupt Biden establishment.
Jennifer King, Washington.
3 people are dead following a shooting near the campus of the University of Cincinnati in Ohio. Correspondent Rita Foley reports.
5 people were shot near the University of Cincinnati campus. 3 of them died. 2 people were taken into custody, including one of the wounded. Local news reports say all 5 victims were men. Police say they recovered some firearms from the scene, but there were no further details immediately available. Earlier, the University of Cincinnati's Public Safety Department posted on X that police were responding to an emergency shortly before 3 in the morning. The department later posted it was a shooting and warned those in the area to be observant and take action as needed. About an hour later, the department issued an all-clear message. I'm Rita Foley.
Tragedy in upstate New York after a small plane carrying 5 members of the same family crashed after they attended a baseball tournament. Details from correspondent Mike Hempen.
The Federal Aviation Administration says the single-engine plane crashed Sunday afternoon in a wooded area. New York State Police say the wreckage of the plane and the remains of the 5 victims were found Sunday night in the town of Masonville. Drones, all-terrain vehicles, and helicopters searched the crash site about 125 miles northwest of New York City. Police say the family was returning to Georgia after attending a tournament in Cooperstown, the home of the Baseball Hall of Fame. The The FAA and the National Transportation Safety Board are investigating the crash. I'm Mike Hempen.
A federal judge issues a ruling that blocks the Biden administration's ban on new exports of liquefied natural gas. U.S. Court for the Western District of Louisiana granted the request for a preliminary injunction that prevents the ban on LNG projects from taking effect while the case remains in court after it was brought by more than a dozen states. West Virginia's Attorney General, one of the plaintiffs in the case, called the court's ruling a big win for the country's energy industry. West Virginia is also one of 22 states that sent a letter to President Biden calling for an end to the pause on liquid natural gas exports. On January 26th, the Biden administration stopped all new approvals of LNG exports to non-free trade agreement countries pending environmental reviews and tests for carbon emissions. America in the Morning continues. The Supreme Court decided on another social media issue by deciding not to rule on two laws from Texas and Florida that would restrict what content can be moderated. Here's tech correspondent Chuck Palm.
The Supreme Court yesterday decided not to make a decision on the legality of the laws in Florida and Texas designed to restrict the power of social media companies to curb content that they disagree with or find objectionable. The two laws passed in 2021 authorized the states to regulate the content moderation practices of large social media platforms. Those decisions were challenged by NetChoice and Computer Communications Industry Association, with members that include companies like Facebook's Meta, Alphabet's Google, and YouTube, as well as TikTok and Snapchat. Two states were split on the issue, blocking the provisions of Florida's law while upholding the Texas measure. Neither law has gone into effect due to litigation. Justice Elena Kagan, writing for the majority, said the Texas law imposed restrictions on the company's First Amendment rights issue. Many Republicans have claimed that social media platforms stifle conservative voices and that this is censorship. Democrats have opposed both state laws, arguing that content moderation violates the company's First Amendment rights. I'm Chuck Palm.
Robert Workman is here with Tuesday Sports on America in the Morning.
Soccer last night, the U.S. men lost to Uruguay 1-0 and are out of Copa America, eliminated for the first time in the group stage of a tournament they hosted. There could be changes coming. At Euro 2024, France defeated Belgium 1-0 on a late own goal. Then after a scoreless battle through extra time, Portugal ousted Slovenia on penalties. France and Portugal will play in the quarterfinals on Saturday. Baseball, the Astros beat the Blue Jays 3-1 on Canada Day in Toronto. All of the scoring coming via the long ball, or as they say north of the border, La Poutine. Note, they don't actually say that. Jeremy Pena and Yordan Alvarez went deep for Houston, while Ernie Clement sent one oot in the ninth to avoid the shutout. They do say that. Mets scored 6 times in the top of the 10th, then held on to nip the Nationals 9-7. J.D. Martinez and Jose Iglesias homered for New York, and the Rockies took a seesaw 8-7 win over the Brewers in 10 innings. Brenton Doyle's second dinger of the night tied it in the bottom of the 9th. Then Jake Cave spelunked one into center for the walk-off. The NBA champion Celtics are ready to extend one of their big stars. Jason Tatum gets 5 years and $314 million. If that sounds like a lot, it's the biggest deal in NBA history. Boston also extended guard Derek White for 4 years. Klay Thompson is on his way to the runner-up Mavericks after a sign-and-trade deal with the Warriors, where Thompson has played his entire 13-year career, winning 4 rings. His new 3-year contract is worth $50 million. And at Wimbledon, first-round wins for defending champion Carlos Alcaraz and top seed Jannik Sinner. Women's 2-seed Coco Gauff won easily. Number 1 Iga Swiatek plays today, along with defending champion Marketa Vondrousova. That's Tuesday Sports.
Thank you, sir. When we return on America in the Morning, for sale, parquet floor and all, after these messages. Welcome back here with America in the Morning. Just in time for the July 4th holiday, a California heat wave. The National Weather Service has issued an excessive heat warning for the San Francisco Bay Area that starts today through Friday. Temperatures in some areas north of San Francisco may reach as high as 110 degrees. It'll be 109 today in Brentwood, east of Oakland. The high heat has also forced state authorities to issue red flag warnings in a number of central and northern California counties due to the chance for wildfire. High temps for July 4th are also expected in a number of parts of America, including California's Mojave Desert, the Southwest, the Gulf Coast, the Southeast, and Mid-Atlantic states. Actor, singer, comedian Jamie Foxx is opening up about his medical emergency from last year. Kevin Carr has the story.
Jamie Foxx is still tight-lipped about the exact details of his health scare from last year, but he's offered some updates for fans.
April 11th last year, bad headache. That's my boy for Avenue. It was gone for 20 days.
In the clip that has been circulated by the X account Art of Dialogue, Fox explains how a headache landed him in the hospital and turned into a loss of 20 days.
So they told me, I'm in Atlanta, they told me. My sister and my daughter took me to the first doctor, they did a cortisone shot. The next doctor said, something going on up there.
The Oscar winner stopped short from explaining the full details, however. This past March at the African American Film Critics Association Awards luncheon, he claimed he will explain it in his own way.
Everybody wants to know what happened, and I'm going to tell you what happened, but I got to do it in my way. I'm going to do it in a funny way. We're going to be on stage. We're going to tell you, we're going to go back to the stand-up.
Fox has spoken about the incident from April 2023 multiple times, including in an Instagram update for fans last July. And during his speech for the Critics' Choice Association's Vanguard Award in December, he disclosed how close he felt to death.
When it's almost over, when you see the tunnel, I saw the tunnel, I didn't see the light. It was hot in that tunnel, too. I don't know where I was going. Am I going to the right place?
I'm Kevin Carr.
It's one of the most iconic franchises in all of sports. If you have the money, you can now own a piece of that history, as the Boston Celtics are up for sale shortly after winning their 18th championship. Correspondent Gethin Coolbaugh has the story.
The ownership group that controls the reigning NBA champion Boston Celtics says that it intends to sell all its shares of the team. In a statement, Boston Basketball Partners LLC said it intends to sell the majority interest of the team in 2024 or early 2025. The Celtics defeated the Dallas Mavericks in the NBA Finals last month to capture the franchise's league record 18th championship. Wyc Grousbeck, whose family leads the ownership group, is expected to remain the team's NBA governor until the sale is completed in 2028. Gethin Coolbaugh, Boston.
That's our show for today, Tuesday, July 2nd, 2024. America in the Morning is produced by Jeff McKay. Our senior producer, Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One.